everyone, it's Lusungo here, and welcome to the And the Women Came podcast. Thank you for coming back. Hey, sometimes you could just be talking to yourself, but anyways, actually, I'm not complaining that I'm documenting all these stories and talking to myself. When I go, I want to have left these voices and this collection of stories, and yeah, I want my son to listen to them. I want him to watch, and hopefully other feminists coming on can also listen and also share their own stories and hear about other amazing women that were girls. Yeah. So how is everybody doing? I'm doing well. I think I'm doing well. How are you doing, Dee? Dee says she's tired. I've actually asked her to mic up so we can have a conversation, and she's always playing with me when I say, Dee, you need to mic up. What are you reading, Dee, for now?
What am I reading right now? I'm reading Sisonke Msimang. There's always another country.
Oh,
Always
yes,
another country.
I really enjoyed that. Enjoyed that.
It's
book.
a really great
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
And it's just at the right time.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome. I finished reading The African Praxis by Jessica Horn that inspired this podcast, and I have started reading Dream Count.
Drags you.
So far, very capturing fiction. She's a good fiction writer, Chimamanda Adichie. Yeah, so that's what I have been reading. But yeah, thank you everyone for your support so far on the podcast and your reception of it. And yes, baby, we're now video. Thank you for watching the YouTube videos. What do they call it? The YouTube. Yes. Please make sure you subscribe, guys. I'm going to mention the number of subscribers here so that when we have built a bigger community, we can look back. So how many do we have right now, Dee? Is it 7?
No, I don't know, like 20 subscribers or something.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But yeah. But thank you to every single view. Thank you so much. And thank you for also those who are listening on Apple Podcasts, on Aircast, is it called, on all the other, on Spotify and all the other podcast outlets. Thank you. I'm learning as I go, but I'm grateful that I have Dee who is holding my hand as we move. Yeah. All right. So I really enjoyed sharing my story and to the biggest transition, part of my story as the biggest transition of my life yet, which is my journey to motherhood. I hope you enjoyed those couple of episodes. And now I'm gonna face point externally now to highlight all the other many women as well that are doing amazing stuff. And today, I really wanted to share with you about one of the story of one of my mentors and friends. She has just recently passed away, and I think it's important to continue to document her story and the work and the impact that she has had on African feminist spaces, and also international development and friendships and sisterhood. She was an amazing human being. Her name was Everjoice Win. She will forever stay a fierce force in my life that helped to shape me as a feminist. And I'm gonna start as always reading a quote, and I'll read a quote from Everjoice herself. And she shared this when she was recording a podcast with Professor Awino Okoch, and it was released in January this year. And she said, "There is enough room in the sky for all birds to fly without colliding." That's my first message. Older women, younger women, queer women, gay people, and everyone in between. There is enough room for us to fly without colliding. However, equally, it's even more important for us to recognize the collective power that we have if we decide to mobilize it and marshal it strategically. because the forces we are dealing with may seem to be desperate and in different corners of the world, but actually they are united. They work together consistently to find ways of keeping us where we are. So, equally, we have to work consistently, connecting across issues, across geographies, across sexual orientations, across whatever it is that seemingly draws us apart. Honestly, that just, I'm not going to use that word again, but it just brings together the kind of person that Everjoice was. Her message was the collective power, the collective matters. And as you can see today, I'm wearing purple because this was her favorite color. And during all her funeral processes, everyone had wore purple. And she also loved sun hats. And I don't have a good one, Everjoy, so that's why I did not wear one. And she also loved lipstick, and I wore a purple one as well in her honor. She was just an amazing woman, a woman. So I'll always remember her. And to share more about her a little bit, I'll read from her LinkedIn that she wrote herself. She said, I have over 30 years' experience at the forefront of civil society movements and organizing, women's rights, and international development. I bring a feminist participatory approach to change efforts in pursuit of social justice. From 1989, as a Zimbabwean graduate, through 2020, I have led, implemented, and managed programs from community levels to national to multi country contexts. I'm committed to Southern feminist leadership in development. I have worked with and in over 40 countries across Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Mesoamerica, Europe, and parts of Latin America. My goal at this moment in my career is to use the experience I have built over 3 decades to support organizations, movements, donor agencies, and philanthropies, as well as individual leaders and activists. And that she did. I'm also just going to read a bit from her. What's the word, D, please? I learned English while reading. Urology, is that what you call it? Okay. I'm waiting for D to mic up again. Yes, what do you call it?
Eulogy.
Eulogy. Yes,
Yeah.
eulogy. Part of her eulogy said friends and family were immensely important to EJ. That was what her nickname was, Everjoice, the full name Everjoice Win, and we used to call her EJ. Their love and support carried her through her demanding career and later through her illness. She was a big sister to many activists across the world whom she mentored through her career. Often she would share her love for good food, reggae music, love for good food, reggae music, lipstick, and hearts on her social media. And if you go to EJ's social media, especially her LinkedIn and her Twitter, you'll see that. You'll see EJ always shared reggae music. She always shared her love for food, lipstick, and sun hats. She was just amazing. And how did I meet her? So EJ passed on. Let me start with saying EJ passed on the, I think, the 7th of March of 2025 this year. So we have been a lot of feminists. We have been grieving the loss of such a feminist giant, and at the same time, we're grateful that she gets to rest, and the impact that she has made will forever stay. Would you imagine that I only met Eva Joyce Win once, but since we met, after meeting her once, we have always talked and been in touch. And sometimes I even marveled at how such a busy person would have time for me to talk to me and check in on me. But that was the kind of person that EJ was. I met EJ when I was just starting my career, I think, in international development, and I was working for Action Aid Malawi. And she came. She was the director for, I think, women's rights theme in Action Aid. Action Aid has gone through a lot of restructuring, so I don't remember what her actual the actual position was called when she left. She stayed at ActionAid for a couple of years. So she came to visit the Malawi country office. And I remember she made us sit in a conference room and she was checking in on us. And she was like, "How are you doing?" And it was such a simple question, but people and everyone felt inclined to speak about the work, right? "Oh, I'm doing well. I'm going to the field." Blah, 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 blah. But EJ asked again, "No, how are you doing? How is the working in relationships? How are you managing personally? How are you taking care of yourselves? How are you working together to make the difference?" In the different areas you're working in and in the different themes. And I just found her so fascinating because sometimes as leaders in this space, we sometimes it can be there can be aloofness for different reasons, but also sometimes you can actually feel the distance between a leader and the people that they are leading. But EJ was not like that. EJ was down to earth, and EJ was she was a girl's girl, a woman's woman. She was an activist who cared truly about the work that we were doing. And over the years, I every time I miss her these days, I go to Twitter and I go, I'm not gonna recognize X whatever. But when I go I go to Twitter, I go to my profile, and in the search I enter Everjoice Win, and all our conversations come in from her from her mocking our president's accent to her calling out different things and me commenting, exchanging memes. It was just she was just that kind of person. And I remember she would come to my WhatsApp. She would be like, "Hi, how are you doing?" Or if she sees an opportunity, she would be like, "You'd be good for this. Do it. I'm going to support you." And I would think, where does she get the time to be there for everyone? Sisterhood was just so important to her. And I remember Ayala. This is an African feminist initiative about African feminist voices. They had this thread where you remember on Twitter, there was a time when someone would start a thread for people to contribute to. So they were like, as an African feminist, what is one word that defines you and that you think is the most important in your feminism? And EJ, as always, came in and said the collective. This work is not about one single individual, it's about us all. We are not free until we are all free. And collective power, EJ kept reminding us that collective power is important in terms of if we want to make a difference. And I wanted to share one thread that really captures what kind of person EJ was. If you celebrate 16 days of activism, you should know EJ was one of the 24 women that sat and discussed about coming up with that initiative. And in 2021, I remember she wrote a thread to explain the history of 16 days of activism. And since it's about women, I'm going to read that thread here. EJ said, "Today we celebrate 30 years of the 16 Days of Activism campaign. When 24 of us met in that code week at the I think this is women's, what is it called? Let me just check again. Center for Women's Global Leadership. So when 24 of us met in that code week at the Center for Global Women's Leadership long ago, we had a bold vision to bring feminists and their movements together around violence against women globally. Little did we imagine we would be where we are today. If you have ever doubted your own power to make change happen, never doubt your collective power as a group of passionate individuals with a big common vision. Look where we are. But maybe if you were born in the last 15 years, you may not know what I'm talking about. 30 years ago, gender based violence against women was not that big of a deal at a global, regional, or national agenda. It was the first issue that even It was the first issue that even governments recognized as a major concern in during the COVID pandemic. Now, she was now talking about now. In fact, back then, many forms of violence against women did not even have a name or local translations, nor was there widespread recognition that violence is a violation of women's human rights. I've told the story here of the Ugandan justice minister who cheated us for wasting government's time and the UN's time on these small, small issues of me correcting my wives in court. He was not the only. I was almost physically attacked by a group of UZ lecturers after Musasa, an organization in Zimbabwe, ran a series of workshops on campuses. It was women's movements who drafted laws, policies, language for governments, the UN, regional blocs, etc. We did the legwork across villages, townships, schools, workplaces. Most of the fruits of that work is simply taken for granted today. When you say it is my right, yes, girl, it is. This year's 16 Days of Activism theme is End Femicide. Femi who? Femi what? You guessed it. The whole notion there, the whole notion that there are folks who deliberately target women and kill them is still a hard one to accept across many countries. But you don't need to look far. Look up stories from 2021. I could go on and on about what we have achieved, transformed in the past 30 years, how the campaign has grown, and all sectors of society that come to the table, sometimes kicking, sometimes screaming, is enough. Or I ask my sisters, do not let them drive you into cynicism. Do not let them take away, destroy, and distort a campaign that has meant so much to so many. Yes, let's express our expressions with governments, with the UN, with celebrities, pretenders, those who hijack and abuse a campaign in which they have personal stake. You and I do. This is ours. This is about us. Now, in EJ fashion, because she had an amazing sense of humor, she ends that thread by saying, snacky message for those who think women's rights work lives women's rights work lives happened on Twitter. The day you show us your own social justice campaign that has changed the world as powerfully as 16 days, ask my children for my ashes and bring me back to life. Till then, bye. That was in proper EJ fashion. That is what she was. An amazing human being who would articulate the journey of African feminism and the struggle and never make us forget where we have come from, where we are, and what we are fighting for. EJ never forgot, and she never missed the opportunity to remind us that we are powerful as women. We are powerful together, that there is enough room for us. And today on this podcast, I remember her because this podcast is about women showing up for other women. And EJ did that through her life, through her friendships, through her work. She did it. And I miss her. I miss her immensely. I wish I would continue to live in a life where EJ is there, in a world where EJ is there and we're talking and gisting and continuing the work. But she's not here. She's left us here. But her work and her impact will stay forever because that is the kind of person that she was. And I want to read something that Jennifer Lentfell wrote on her. She wrote a post on her on her LinkedIn in memory of EJ, and she said a message for my fellow global development professionals. Whether you knew Everjoice Win personally or not, whether you worked with her in some small or large capacity, whether you considered yourself an activist or a careerist in international aid, you have likely been impacted by her life and work, which were inseparable. And this is very true. EJ's work and EJ's life, you could not separate these two. And Jennifer continues to share. She shared a range of resources where you can hear or read about EJ. EJ was a writer. She spoke on various podcasts, and I would encourage you to go back and look at what the work that EJ did. And EJ, I would like to promise you that we'll continue the work that you started. We'll continue being there for each other. We'll continue leaning on each other, and we'll keep your memory alive by living the life that you lived and remembering that alone we might not go very far, but together in our collective power, we are powerful and will continue to make transformational difference in the world. And that's my contribution to making sure that EJ's work and name lives on. I hope when you listen to this episode, you go back. We'll share links below and on our social media on EJ's work, so you can look at it and it can inspire you, even in those low days when you feel like, okay, what is this work for? You can read EJ's work. You can listen to her voice calling us to action, to continue living a life that is worth living, continue creating the world, co-creating the world that we want to see for women and gender diverse people. So thank you so much for being here and for listening. It was me, Lusungu, and I hope you can write us at andthewomencame@gmail.com. And you can also follow us on our different socials and Instagram and the Women Came. And we're also going to TikTok soon. And yeah, please write us, share your stories about how women have showed up for you. And if you know someone like EJ, please share so we can also share their stories here to make sure that we are documenting these stories for feminists that will come after us and for those feminists in different parts of the world, so we can continue to share our stories. Thank you for being here. Until next time, it was me, Lusungu.